Imagine looking at a pile of gold so massive it could instantly collapse the global economy. A mountain of unimaginable wealth, forged over centuries, shimmering with pure sunlight. Now imagine all of it vanishing into thin air in a single night. This is not a myth. This is a documented, historical event, and the most terrifying part is that this immense fortune is still out there, hidden somewhere in the most hostile, unforgiving mountain range on the planet. But before you pack your bags and go looking for it, you need to understand one chilling fact. Almost everyone who has ever gotten close to finding it has either disappeared without a trace, gone completely insane, or met a gruesome, unexplained end. What you are about to hear is the dark, true story of a fallen empire, a catastrophic betrayal, and a treasure so cursed that the mountains themselves seem to swallow anyone who dares to seek it. Hundreds of years ago, long before modern maps existed, a legendary empire ruled over an impossibly vast territory. They built grand cities in the clouds, carved sprawling roads through deadly cliffs, and possessed more gold than any civilization in human history. But here is the most fascinating detail. To them, gold was not money. It had no financial value. They believed gold was the literal sweat of the sun, a sacred material meant only to decorate their temples and honor their gods. They built life-sized gardens entirely out of pure gold, golden corn stalks, golden llamas, golden insects resting on golden leaves. The sheer volume of this precious metal was staggering. Then the men of iron arrived. Coming from across a vast ocean, these brutal invaders were driven by a terrifying, unquenchable thirst for wealth. They had weapons that spat fire, beasts that the locals had never seen, and armor that could not be pierced. The clash was violent, short, and catastrophic. Through a devastating act of betrayal during what was supposed to be a peaceful meeting, the invaders ambushed the empire's leaders and captured the God King himself. With the God King held hostage in a tiny, dark stone room, the empire was paralyzed. The king, desperately trying to save his own life and understanding the invaders' bizarre obsession with the shiny yellow metal, made a proposal that defies belief. He stood in his prison cell, reached his hand as high up the wall as he could, and drew a line. He promised to fill that entire room with solid gold, and then fill it twice over with silver, in exchange for his freedom. The invaders, blinded by greed, agreed. What followed was the largest mobilization of wealth in human history. For months, endless lines of people marched through the deadly mountain passes, carrying tons upon tons of golden artifacts, stripping their own sacred temples bare to save their ruler. The room slowly filled. The invaders watched in absolute awe as their wildest dreams materialized before their eyes. The ransom was paid. The contract was fulfilled. But the invaders never intended to let him go. In a cold-blooded act that would doom them forever, they executed the God King. When the news of this treacherous murder echoed through the mountains, it reached the ears of the empire's supreme general, who was currently marching toward the city, with the largest and final shipment of gold. A shipment so colossal it dwarfed everything that had already been delivered. Stop for a second and think about the logistics of this. We are talking about tens of thousands of pounds of pure gold, carried by thousands of men on foot, in the middle of freezing, oxygen-deprived mountain peaks. When the general heard that his king was dead, he gave a single chilling order. He commanded his men to divert the caravan into uncharted territory. They were to take the gold into the darkest, most inaccessible depths of the cloud forests, and bury it where the men of iron would never, ever find it. And just like that, the greatest treasure on earth vanished. The men of iron tortured thousands of locals trying to find the location, but no one spoke. The gold was gone. For decades, the invaders sent heavily armed expeditions into the misty jungles and jagged peaks, searching for the hidden fortune. None of them found it. Many of them never returned at all. The terrain itself seemed to fight back. Sudden rock slides, mysterious diseases, freezing fogs that caused men to walk off cliffs in the dead of night. The legend of the lost treasure was born, and with it, a creeping suspicion that the gold was protected by something far more sinister than mere rocks and dirt. As the centuries passed, the story became a terrifying obsession for explorers. But here is where the story gets truly disturbing. There is a documented case of a man who actually found it. A poor explorer from across the sea managed to marry into a family descended from the fallen empire's nobility. According to historical archives, his new family blindfolded him and led him deep into a treacherous mountain pass for days. When they finally removed the blindfold, he was standing inside a massive artificial cavern. Before him lay the lost treasure. Mountains of golden statues, shields, and sacred artifacts piled high in the darkness. He was allowed to take a small portion of the gold, just enough to make him obscenely wealthy back in his hometown. He became one of the richest men alive overnight. Before he died, he wrote a detailed map and a set of instructions on how to navigate the deadly peaks to find the cavern. He sent this guide to his king. This document, known as the Cursed Guide, actually exists, but the man died suddenly and mysteriously just days after writing it. The king immediately sent a massive military expedition guided by a local priest to follow the instructions. Halfway up the mountains, the priest vanished entirely in the middle of the night. No footprints, no struggle, just gone. The expedition leader went completely mad, claiming the trees were whispering to him, and he eventually threw himself off a cliff. The remaining men fled in absolute terror. Listen closely to this next part, because it defies all logic. In the mid-20th century, an elite team of international researchers decided to brave the Forbidden Zone. They were funded by millionaires and had the absolute best survival gear money could buy. They set up a base camp deep in the cloud forest, determined to map the area once and for all. For the first 3 days, their radio transmissions back to civilization were completely normal. But on the 4th day, the tone of the expedition leader changed entirely. His voice over the radio sounded hollow, terrified. He reported that they had found something, not the gold, but a warning. A massive, perfectly spherical stone covered in bizarre carvings of screaming faces, positioned deliberately in the middle of a river. That night, the radio feed cut to dead static. A rescue team was dispatched 2 weeks later when the weather finally cleared. What they found still haunts the locals to this day. The campsite was completely intact. Tents were zipped up, sleeping bags were dry, and the expensive equipment was neatly arranged. But the team was gone. The only clue left behind was a journal belonging to the expedition's geologist. The final entry, written in frantic, barely legible handwriting, did not talk about gold. It talked about the sound. The geologist wrote that for 3 nights, they had heard a low, rhythmic humming coming from deep within the earth, a sound so deep it made their teeth vibrate. He wrote that the fog was not behaving like normal weather, that it seemed to intentionally surround them, moving against the wind. The last sentence on the page simply read, "They are breathing beneath the rock, and they are hungry." None of those researchers were ever seen again. Stop and process that for a moment. These were rational, highly educated scientists reduced to absolute primal terror by something they could not comprehend. Does a mountain range drive people to collective insanity? Or did they stumble upon the ancient hidden defenses of a vanished world? The empire may have been destroyed by the invaders, but their final secret was secured with a level of genius and ruthlessness that we still do not fully understand. They didn't just hide the treasure, they weaponized the landscape. They turned the mountains into an eternal tomb for anyone blinded by greed. Every year, amateur treasure hunters and seasoned mercenaries still attempt to conquer the misty peaks. They analyze satellite imagery looking for unnatural depressions in the terrain. They use ground-penetrating radar to search for hidden cavities. Yet, the mountains remain completely silent. The sheer scale of the hidden fortune continues to act like a deadly magnet, drawing people into the jaws of the earth. We are talking about life-size statues of warriors made of solid gold, ancient astronomical discs carved from pure silver, and literal mountains of emeralds. The temptation is simply too powerful for human nature to resist. One recent explorer, who survived by the skin of his teeth, reported finding an ancient stone pathway completely covered by thick jungle vines. He followed it until he reached a massive rock wall with a perfectly carved entrance. He claimed that as he peered inside, he saw a faint, unnatural yellow glow reflecting off the damp stone walls. But before he could step inside, a deafening crack echoed through the valley, and a sudden, violent landslide nearly crushed him to death. He ran for 2 days without stopping, terrified out of his mind, convinced that the mountain itself was trying to kill him. So, what is really happening up there? Is it just incredibly hostile terrain, a harsh environment that naturally claims the lives of the unprepared? Or is it something else? Did the ancient empire build elaborate, deadly traps that still function after all these centuries? Or is there a darker, more supernatural force at play, a curse placed upon the stolen sweat of the sun by a civilization that was brutally wiped from the face of the earth? The truth remains buried under thousands of tons of rock and suffocating jungle. The greatest treasure in human history, worth billions upon billions of dollars, is still sitting exactly where it was hidden all those centuries ago. It is waiting in the dark. It is real. But if you ever find yourself staring up at those jagged, misty peaks, hearing the wind howl through the ancient valleys, remember the countless souls who went looking for it and never came back. Some things are meant to stay lost, and some treasures demand a price that no amount of gold can ever repay.